Ontario provides funding to LU's veterinary program. Thunder Bay MPPs react to the provincial budget. And U.S. President Joe Biden visits Ottawa. Good evening and thank you for joining us. The Ford government has made a historic investment into veterinary training in this region. The provincial budget contains over $14 million for Lakehead University to collaborate with the University of Guelph to expand their vet program to LU. Mike Lang has been following this story for us today. He joins us live in studio with the details. Mike?
Thanks, Riley. It's a big announcement for anyone dealing with the shortage of vets in Thunder Bay and the surrounding region. The investment will allow for 20 veterinarian students to attend LU starting in the fall of 2024, meaning local pet owners will soon have greater access to care for their animals.
We're investing $14.7 million over the next 2 years for a new collaborative Doctor of Veterinary Medicine program with the University of Guelph and Lakehead University to address veterinarian shortages in rural and northern communities.
The project announced by MPP Kevin Holland to area politicians will enable LU to enroll 20 students each year into the new veterinary training program, marking the first time the province has increased vet spaces in 35 years. The students will spend their first 2 years on the Lakehead campus and then complete their third and fourth years at Guelph. LU President Moira McPherson says the desire for a vet partnership with Guelph was over 2 years in the making before they received the government funding.
We started growing from a seed into an actual idea, an initiative, and then we took that initiative to our internal teams and decided this was a great step forward for increasing vet capacity in Ontario and particularly in the north.
Most vet clinics in the Northwest are at or above capacity, which has forced many pet owners to drive for hours to find the nearest clinic that will accept new animal clients. NOMA President Wendy Landry has been lobbying the government for this veterinary program expansion for some time. The collaborative vet program will also support the agri-food sector by expanding the number of vets that can care for livestock.
That's something that we have been advocating too. Goes along with our health services as well, right? So, and this is not just about pets. This is about agriculture. This is about farm animals. This is about that food supply, that food safety supply, all of that piece too. So happy to see that they heard us on that topic as well. And then we'll continue our advocacy too to have that program come to LU.
Just again, a huge thank you to the Government of Ontario. This was a crucial step in our ability to go forward with this exciting collaborative program with the University of Guelph.
The LU program is set to begin in the fall of 2024, and graduates can receive incentives to practice in underserviced areas such as the Northwest. Mike Lang, TBT News.
It was the final day of gathering for the Thunder Bay District Municipal League. One of the key topics on the agenda was the status of Superior North EMS and the latest increase in its calls for service. This comes after the recent approval of the EMS Master Plan, which includes the controversial merger of ambulance bases in the district. Vasilios Bellis reports.
The first in-person meeting since the beginning of the pandemic for the Thunder Bay District Municipal League concluded on Friday, which included a presentation by the new chief of Superior North EMS.
Stations they're working out of right now are not adequate for a modern paramedic service.
Shane Meir recently took over the role, not long after Thunder Bay City Council approved a 10-year EMS master plan. It includes the consolidation of the stations in Schreiber and Terrace Bay, as well as in Nipigon and Red Rock. During his presentation, Meir stressed these moves would benefit the services provided as a whole, especially considering these stations involved are outdated.
We need to increase their shoot times by providing them with modern facilities, areas where the actual ambulance is located in the same building as where they're being housed and working, so they can have a rapid response to that ambulance. We're going to have quick acting garage doors to go up and down and get those paramedics onto the road into those emergency situations as fast as possible.
But for some leaders from the affected communities, including Terrace Bay Mayor Paul Malashewski, there are still concerns how these changes could affect their local EMS service.
Mr. Gates said response times wouldn't change. We don't understand how response times wouldn't change if an ambulance is 10 minutes away. So we don't get that part.
The approved EMS master plan also includes shutting down the station in Beardmore, which falls in the municipality of Greenstone. Councillor Eric Peach fears not only how this would affect his community, but those nearby.
You're now pulling ambulances and resources from either Geraldton or Nipigon, and once you do that, you start staging ambulances in between our wards in our community, which greatly increases the response time for anything else.
For others, there was the concern of whether their community's voice was being heard.
Haven't really been consulted a lot throughout the process.
Red Rock clerk Mike Figliomeni was hoping for more of these opportunities, explaining his mindset moving forward.
Make it a service that will serve both communities and the entire district equally, fairly, and again to the best level of service that can happen through this consolidation process.
Moving forward, Chief Shane Mears says consultation with affected communities will impact decision making. That will include a meeting on April 4th in Terrace Bay, which will include members from that community and Schreiber. Vasilios Bellows, TBT News.
Also at the TBDML conference, Thunder Bay Atikokan MPP Kevin Holland discussed his government's provincial budget that was released yesterday. Holland spoke highly of some of the investments he believes will directly benefit the Northwest.
We're making the investments into mental health and addictions. We're making the investments into infrastructure. We're making the investments into the mining sector. We're making the investments into skilled trade shortages that we're facing. And it's not just skilled trades, it's the shortage of workers across all sectors and industries. These are all things that are contained in the budget, and as I said, we've made historical investments to address those issues.
Thunder Bay Superior MPP Lise Bourgeois was also on hand during the two-day conference. She says it's still unclear exactly where much of the provincial dollars are going, but Bourgeois says affordable housing is an area that needs to be addressed.
The overall budget for housing and municipal affairs has been cut by $124 million. I have been trying to find funding for 2 housing projects in Thunder Bay. They're both shovel-ready. There's nothing available that they can apply for to get those things going. So that's a very big concern. I don't see anything in the budget that's going to alleviate that pressure.
Yesterday's budget is the most expensive in the province's history. Siobhan Morris brings us more reaction to the document.
On the morning after tabling his budget, the finance minister again stressed the need to be careful.
I haven't seen this level of volatility in markets, in geopolitical, in economic terms in decades.
It's in those choppy waters that cities like Toronto have been pleading for more cash to fill gaps from the pandemic and lost revenue from development charges. The province only contributed a fraction of what Toronto asked for.
We would have loved to have seen everything, but we recognize the challenges that the provincial government's facing.
Queen's Park is working towards audits of cities who say they want to top up, but the finance minister can't say when they might be done. In the strained healthcare sector, there's more cash for home care.
People want to be cared at home or in the community a lot more, so we're increasing the funding by over $500 million a year for home and community care.
There's also money to hire supervisors for new nurses, hang on to mid to late career nurses, and license internationally trained doctors. Other key investments include $425 million over 3 years for mental health and addiction, $800 million more in hospital funding, and $72 million to cover OHIP fees at private surgical clinics. The opposition says this is not a budget that meets the moment.
I've never seen a government so gleefully celebrating mediocrity. This budget isn't really worth the paper it's printed on.
Even with more money going out the door, there isn't new direct help for Ontarians.
This is a budget that does not really speak to the reality that most Ontarians are facing today, and that is that life has become deeply unaffordable.
The government is offering tax credits to Ontario manufacturers, a move it hopes will help businesses grow and add jobs.
Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
Thunder Bay Police have now laid numerous charges against the driver of a car involved in a fatal crash yesterday morning on the city's north side. Police say the car was traveling at high speed on the 30-kilometer-per-hour section of East Line Boulevard when it crashed into a tree. The passenger, a 34-year-old Thunder Bay woman, was rushed to hospital with serious injuries and did not survive. Police say the male driver fled the scene and officers followed a trail of blood in the snow to a nearby home. 35-year-old David Thomas Edward Anderson of Thunder Bay has been charged with impaired driving and dangerous driving causing death, along with failing to remain at the scene of a fatal collision. He's also charged with failing to comply with a bail release order and with a probation order. Anderson remains in custody until his next court appearance. The head of the regional hospital says there's no plan to end an expensive arrangement with the Thunder Bay Police Service that has uniformed officers stationed at the hospital to curb violent incidents in the ER. It costs up to a whopping $60,000 a month, money that could be better spent on patient care. But the CEO says safety has to come first. Ryan Benazzo has more.
In response to a spate of assaults on emergency room staff, the Regional Health Sciences Centre began contracting uniformed police officers for added security back in July. About $500,000 later, that's not expected to change.
There's no plan at this point to remove police presence.
The officers have been well received by staff, says CEO Rhonda Crocker-Ellicott. Still, this isn't where she wants to allocate vital hospital resources. It can cost more than $2,000 per shift. That's $60,000 a month or $720,000 a year.
I would like to be putting them towards frontline patient care, of course. However, I can't apologize for putting in police presence in order to protect our staff, in order to ensure a safe workplace. So ideally, we look to shift to do something different because it is a very significant cost. We have identified these cost pressures to Ontario Health and the Ministry.
But so far, there hasn't been any indication that the province will provide additional funding. And make no mistake, Crocker-Ellicott says this expense is affecting patient care.
100%. We have significant and difficult decisions we make each and every day with respect to the prioritization of resources to provide care.
She insists the ER is a safe place for those who need care, but she's pleading for patience from members of the public who come in, even with an average ER wait time of nearly 2 hours to see a doctor. Ryan Benazzo, TBT News.
Local members of the United Church of Canada are joining local anti-poverty advocates in calling for a federal basic income program. A small group of protesters gathered outside local MP Patty Haidu's office today. Former MP Ernie Epp is a member of the United Church's Livable Income Network, and he was joined by other activists and members of Poverty-Free Thunder Bay. This rally is one of many happening across Canada, aimed at politicians to get them to support Bill C-223. That bill calls for the development of a national framework for a guaranteed basic income program.
We're here to encourage her with other members of the House of Commons to support the bill that MP Leah Gazan has put forward to develop a national plan for a guaranteed livable income for Canadians. It's important because so many people find themselves without the resources. Minimum wages even don't provide a livable income these days. It's all the more important to provide people with the resources so they can find the housing, the food they need, and provide for their needs.
Heidi was in BC today, but one of her staffers offered to arrange a meeting with Epp's group regarding their lobbying effort. The Wake the Giant Music Festival's much-anticipated lineup was announced today. The big event on September 16th will be the 4th concert organized by DFC High School, bringing Indigenous and non-Indigenous music fans together on the waterfront. Last year's lineup saw big names like Our Lady Peace, Aqua, Steve Aoki, and local musician Asanabi. The concert organizers say they wanted to go bigger and better. This year's headliner will be Deadmau5, a Canadian electronic music producer and DJ with numerous hit songs and over 50 million followers. The concert also features Dean Lewis, the X-Ambassadors, Matt Mack, Ruby Waters, Sarah Kay, Sagatay, and the Thunder Spirit Drummers. Wake the Giant wouldn't be complete without performances from DFC students, including Brianne Mikas, who's performing as a jingle dancer again this year.
I think it shows not only to students, Indigenous students here, but also Indigenous students everywhere, not just in Thunder Bay, but just students in general, Indigenous students, that we can get to big concerts and stuff like that, and we can't when Indigenous people do have talent. and it's just a great way for people to see it.
And we're looking to make some social change, so I think there's a lot of artists that are excited to be part of the festival, to jump on board, and yeah, we're super excited to have Deadmau5. We had Steve Aoki last year, who's like, you know, obviously kind of in the same league, so here we are this year, we're delivering once again.
This year's Wake the Giant poster was designed by a DFC student, Harmony Fiddler, who was inspired by the beauty of the Northern Lights and the connection within the stars. Tickets for the September 16th concert are now available for purchase on the Wake the Giant website. It's a welcome sign of spring in Thunder Bay. The Canadian Coast Guard Icebreaker, the Samuel Risley, has been very busy getting the local harbor ready for incoming and outgoing vessels. The Risley arrived at the port last night and could be seen churning up the ice around Kiefer Terminal during the lunch hour today. The Icebreaker was getting help from the Point Valor tug, and the thinner ice this winter seemed to make things go pretty smoothly. Port officials say the Risley and its crew will be here throughout the weekend. The Icebreaker's first order of business was freeing up the 2 grain ships that have been wintering in Thunder Bay, so they can start loading up the grain from local elevators. The Soo locks are scheduled to open tomorrow, and the first ship is expected to arrive late Saturday night or Sunday morning. Port officials are expecting a very busy start to the season due to last year's successful grain harvest on the prairies. Well, turning to weather now, but sticking on that spring topic, it was starting to feel a little springy out there today.
I would say so, with temperatures hitting 5 Celsius. That was after another cool night, low of -15 and a wind chill of -20 to start the day under those clear skies. It just got very cold. But winds were at times completely calm, others up to 15 kilometers per hour, and glorious sunshine for everyone. That sunshine continues to the west, and folks there definitely enjoying their 5 Celsius. They had overnight lows hitting -18 in the fort. It was actually a little cooler as you head up into, or a little warmer as you head up into Red Lake in the overnight hours. They only dropped down to -10. They're currently at 6 Celsius, also with lots of sunshine. And the sunshine continues eastward into Armstrong and Greenstone at 8 and 5 Celsius. Greenstone did have a few brief periods of some very light rain earlier today, and winds this afternoon have been very, very gusty, but they are enjoying gorgeous temperatures. A little cooler along the North Shore as we head into Marathon at 1, and Sault Ste. Marie, they are currently at 3 Celsius under mostly cloudy skies. They too had a cool night as well, but they're preparing for some snow, believe it or not, but we'll get into that more later on in the newscast. For the city of Thunder Bay tonight, we are looking at a low of -7, so quite a bit warmer, although wind chills will still feel like -13 with some increasing clouds. And then as we head into the weekend and early next week, temperatures are actually going to be a little bit cooler for next week, so you definitely want to enjoy the weekend ahead. I'll have more details on what those numbers will look like later on in the news hour.
Well, thank you so much, Fiona. Well, U.S. President Joe Biden made his first state visit to Canada. We'll let you know what was discussed as your Friday News Hour continues.
One great thing, and I tell other world leaders I meet with when they ask about the geopolitical circumstances of the world, I said, we're lucky. We have Canada to our north.